hatred, death, would I have transcended these things, my metamorphosis would have been complete. But ye have trespassed into this house of the dead, and here in this darkness unfaltering, you shall fade and obscure. An icy wind blows, the bell rings louder, the wind comes from the casket as the portcullis slams shut and locks behind the players. Usfer, the forsaken and faithless necromancer, lives again. So, good evening. This is a conclusion to a video long since coming because the adventure has long since been complete for close to 2 months now. If you remember my last video, it was the Necromancer's Mansion. Part 1, this is part 2. So after the players had taken the cleric, the acolyte, back to the chapel, the cleric had been revived by his high priest in the town, and it was during this time that we had a player fall out. Athena, our human warrior, her player, which, he decided that he had a lot of things going on, and he was going to have to step away. And so, best of luck to him, and hoping and praying that everything comes out all right. So, but now the party is down one warrior, and so the party is made up of still a cleric, a fallen or a fallen druid, I should say. An elf ninja, which the ninja class was something I homebrewed, a human assassin, a half-orc ranger, and a dragonborn paladin, which I homebrewed the dragonborn myself, so that everything was fairly well balanced for the players and it wouldn't be stupid and broken, So, the Necromancer's Mansion was an adventure I'd created myself for a Morgan's Fort campaign, and I designed it in a way that I wanted level 1, or at the very least level 2, party members to be able to take this place on. I intended it to be an early adventure thing, even though Morgan's Fort is already an early adventure sort of module. I added this to it, and excuse me, allergies. The players re-enter the mansion after they had returned to Morgan's Fort with the acolyte, and they return the next day. This time with a hired wizard in tow. The Morgan's Fort module says that Thalen Terramades will not adventure. However, I'd already at this point played enough around with Thalen's character, as was put down in the book, instead of him being a nice, friendly, helpful old man who was just a tiny bit haughty and prideful. Instead, I made him just the most unbearable jerk that you could ever meet. Haughty, and like the haughtiness stayed, the pridefulness stayed, but it was all like pompous and extravagant and kind of eye rolly, like over the top kind of character. But be that as it may, the players needed help, and through some role play, they were talking to him, and he expressed interest in some of the tomes that might be in this Necromancer's Mansion. And they said, well, how would you like to come with us, and you could possibly have the mansion? Now, I didn't intend for him to have the mansion. I actually intended for my players to have it as a home base between Slate Home and Morgan's Fort. However, it's still possible for them to figure out a home base in Morgan's Fort. But that was kind of my freebie that I was going to give to them. But I decided I didn't want Thalen to have it, so I just tore it down once they finished this up. So they went back through the room, and they almost had the mansion cleared. There was just one more hallway with some skeletons that had no, they had killed those in the first go. But the singing from the walls is what unnerved them. So there was a particular pitfall that stood outside of Usfer's little boss room. If the players failed a death save or a death ray save, they were going to fall down this hole, down a chute. Now, the chute itself does no damage. It itself is not dangerous, but it was trolly because it's not the trap itself, it's what the trap leads to. And it was supposed to lead to some zombies. One by one, our characters started falling. We had 5 of the 6 party members made it to the other side. All that was left was the Dragonborn Paladin, who can't jump, and he can jump if he passes an athletics check, which was something that I tried to come up with on how to do that. I think I just used the standard DC 15 with a D20 because I couldn't figure out the percentage for how that worked. So just on the fly, I was like, yeah, roll a D20. Let's see if you make this. He did not. He rolled a 2. Not only did he fail, he face planted right on the panel, which gave way. He started falling. Everybody starts trying to grab him, and they start getting pulled down because they're failing strength checks. And eventually, we have this strange chain link falling down to the pit, and they're singing down there far enough to be like, it's really dark down here. And eventually, somebody rolled a nat 20, which I felt was good enough to kind of help pull people out. And, again, it was kind of like a trolley trap, and, it didn't went the way that I thought it would, but be that as it may. They enter the boss room. They get the monologue from Usfer, the Forsaken Necromancer. He is a Zombraer, which I had decided in this world means that not only has he pledged himself to undeath, he is on the journey to becoming a lich or demi-lich. But I decided that the evolution of this metamorphosis would go human corpse, Zombraer, Skeletor, lich, demi-lich. That's what I thought was going to be the most logical explanation for that. But as turns out, we still have our human assassin, who in the order of initiative goes first. Usfer goes behind him. The assassin entered in such a way and passed a hiding roll. So he passed his hide. He got up for the assassination feat that the assassins have, which is an insta-kill. It's kind of like a sneak attack for the base thief in basic fantasy RPG. It's +4 to an attack roll. So it has to hit the armor class, which he rolled really exceptionally good with. All that's left now is for Usfer to pass his death ray save. He rolled a 1. And so on turn 1, round 1, Usfer, the Forsaken Necromancer, is destroyed by the assassin. Immediately killed. So, it's one of those things where, in hindsight, I take a look at what worked and what didn't work. So, because this was my first homebrewed dungeon, and I have learned some things since, and I've made some mistakes along the way as a dungeon master that I'm still learning from. I'm still making mistakes. There's certain things I throw into my game that do bog the game down, and I'm learning a way to mitigate that because I do want to tell a story and give the players a chance to chase things. But I also have to realize that when I do certain things, it kind of takes away a little bit of player freedom. So I have decided certain things I'm not going to do anymore. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean, like, we hit a thing where essentially, anyway, essentially what I did was a particular part of the story. The players got trapped in the settlement because the orc slaver trapped them in, essentially. Could they have gotten out? Certainly. Could they have fought the goblin hordes by themselves? They certainly could. But I felt like I could have handled that in a better way. And that's kind of the way I felt like about the Necromancer's Mansion. Um, Certain traps didn't work the way I thought they should, and in fact, there was only a couple traps in this whole entire mansion, which I think was my biggest mistake, is I didn't put more in. Um, because obviously once they killed Usfer, because the zombies were linked to him, the zombies were on the second floor at the bottom of the chute. Um, the uh, the trap didn't work the way it should have. I think next time I'm going to tweak something like that to where the trap in and of itself is not going to be deadly, but what it leads to certainly will be. Um, I don't know. There's things I could have done differently, but all in all, how did I feel about the Necromancer's Mansion? I felt like a lot of it worked very well. A lot of people felt like it had a really good atmosphere. Certainly, um, I think I've said this before. It had the effect I wanted it to. If you remember my first video, I talked about the cauldron that tried to possess one of the players and how that worked. And it didn't necessarily go off the way it should have, but it accomplished what I wanted it to do, in that it made the players feel unsafe. And that's kind of how I feel like, as a whole, the mansion was. There's certain things I could have done better. I'm still figuring that kind of stuff out, but hopefully we'll get that figured out at some point. But it's just like I'm running a second campaign right now, and so Usfer makes a return to this world, which is totally different because it's a homebrew world. So meanwhile, I've got this campaign that I'm going to work on Usfer and his layers more. And for this campaign that I'm running with the original group, I've learned from my mistakes in some of those particular instances, and I had a player express gratitude and excitement at what I was hoping would be a well-received campaign. And so I feel like, it still made mistakes after that, and I aim to correct those mistakes and run these games better than what I have been. Again, kind of a new DM, so I haven't really been doing this very long. But anyway, take care. God bless, guys. See you on the flip side.